Hello. If you're wondering where you are right now, you're following Grandma. I'm sitting in my study in a 250-year-old cottage on the northeast coast of Scotland. It's cosy in here, but outside as I look through the wee window, the North Sea looks cold. Today it has a sharp grey metallic colour. Waves dance and glisten in the winter sunshine, and silly seagulls bob up and down on the surface. I can see a couple of local fishing boats, their owners still working hard, pulling up the pots, hoping to find a lively lobster inside. If I look out towards the town, I can see the smoke rising from the small traditional fish houses busy preparing Arbroath smokies. These are local fish, haddock, cooked in wood-fired ovens. They are delicious, especially when they're warm and fresh out of the smoker. 20 years ago, I was living and working full-time in London. I had grown-up children, 7 grandchildren, and I was looking for somewhere to escape from the constant noise and activity of the city. I had my eye on somewhere warmer, like the southwest of England. When a friend invited me to spend Hogmanay in her cottage by the sea in northeast Scotland, I thought that sounds fun. I remember feeling the biting cold wind as I stepped off the train in Arbroath on a stormy late December day. The only thing was to put on more layers of clothes, good waterproofs, and embrace the elements. I fell in love with the beaches, the cliffs, the huge skies, and that magnificent, powerful sea. I'd just sold our family house, had my small London apartment, and in my head I was looking for a new home somewhere warm. This New Year visit changed everything. I'd been a townie for as long as I could remember. Dealing with crowded tube trains, traffic jams and rush hour were all part of my everyday commute to work at the BBC. I'd started as a television researcher, became a producer, and then, after 20 years, I launched my own small, successful television company, Box Clever. I spent a lot of time travelling for work, and at weekends I enjoyed everything London had to offer. Walking through the old city, avoiding the hordes of tourists gaping at historic buildings, dropping in to see the latest museum exhibition, or losing myself in an art gallery. In the evenings, there was music or theatre at the National or the Festival Hall. On sunny days, there were boat trips on the River Thames, or simply picnics and cycling in Regent's Park or Kensington Gardens. I loved London. And then I had this unexpected New Year trip to Scotland, and 3 months after, I was the proud owner of a small fisherman's cottage. That's a story you can hear in a later podcast. Following Grandma podcasts will explain how I came to live in this hidden part of Scotland, the local people I met, and the unexpected experiences I had. Some podcasts will be more serious, touching on shipwrecks and care in the community, whilst others will explore seaweed foraging and how you can dry it on washing lines. Another discovers the ancient art of water divining and how important it was for farmers to find fresh water for their sheep. There's a blog that tells you how to dress appropriately for hunting chanterelle mushrooms. It's actually to keep the vicious Scottish mosquitoes at bay, whilst others still remain a mystery, like the beautiful labyrinth we discovered on the edge of a coastal path. It's still a mystery. And then there's a real cliffhanger. What happened to the small dog that chased a rabbit over the edge? Was he hurt? Could he be saved before the incoming tide covered the tiny sandy patch he'd landed on? Well, start following Grandma and you can find out. Life is all about change. And one thing I've learned over many years is that change, even if it's difficult, can bring unexpected opportunities. I discovered this when out of the blue a competitor offered to buy Box Clever, my television company. I was faced with a big change, and letting go of my business was a difficult decision. For over 10 years, I'd grown a successful company from nothing. It was my baby. However, personal circumstances meant it was a sensible decision. So I handed over Box Clever with sadness. And then, as part of the deal, the new company asked me to continue working for them as a media consultant to my clients. This meant I now only worked part-time. In addition, once I'd carefully handed things on, I found there was another bonus. I was able to let go of years of worry and responsibility for staff, clients, contracts and commissions. But an unexpected benefit was that I suddenly had the freedom to escape regularly to my cottage in Scotland. I got to know my neighbours. I explored Angus and Aberdeenshire, and I loved the view from my study window. One of the first things I did was to organise a local carpenter to make a comfy window seat where I could sit and watch the daily North Sea performances. It never disappoints, from waves crashing over the high sea wall to the mill pond-like sparkle on a warm summer afternoon. Today, the waves are still dancing, the seagulls still bobbing up and down, and I'm delighted you're following Grandma, and I can share this with you. No doubt the locals at the pub next door, the Commercial Inn, talked about the crazy woman from London who came for New Year and then bought the fisherman's cottage next door. I was from London. I had no close family or friends in Arbroath, no evident partner. I was a bit of a mystery. However, I was interested in them, what they did, their values, their everyday lives and activities. And as people shared their stories, I discovered that many of them lived very different lives to me and my London neighbours. They included farmers, fishermen, raspberry growers, lifeboat men, seaweed experts, historians, roofers and silversmiths. They were welcoming and generous-hearted. Because I was writing blogs, I was immediately accepted as a writer from London. The mystery woman was explained. Over the next few years, having homes in both places, a cottage in Scotland and a modern apartment by the canal in central London was the best of both worlds. I moved easily between the two, working in London, seeing my family regularly in Oxfordshire and Cambridge, and having my grandchildren for fishing and holidays. But when the COVID pandemic struck, I had to make a hard decision. I chose to stay full-time in my home in Scotland. It was a huge change and meant I was marooned 500 miles away from my family. It wasn't always easy. However, it gave me time to look back at some of my writing and reflect on the adventures I've had here in Scotland over the last decade. Adventures worth sharing more widely. As a BBC television producer, one of my jobs was to discover unusual stories. My experiences in Scotland have certainly more than matched many I'd filmed. Grandma has seen dramatic lifeboat launches, enjoyed wild swimming, dug out local clay from the base of sandhills to make earthenware pots, and every day there are intriguing stories around the town. Recently I overheard, "Did you know they found a sofa and chairs in a cave in the cliffs?" Or, "Did you hear about the baby deer that was the victim of a hit-and-run accident up near Kirriemuir?" Sometimes stories that are best left alone. The headless corpse washed up on the beach. But most qualify for following Grandma podcasts. And that brings me to the question, why am I recording podcasts in 2024? The answer is simple. In 2023, shortly after lockdown ended, when we could all get out again, I had an accident. I went for a walk by the sea, I caught my foot in a nasty pothole, fell and broke my arm and fingers. They say every cloud has a silver lining, And mine was the arrival of my tech-literate grandson, Stan, who came to cheer me up. He'd been following his grandma for some years, whether he knew it or not. He suggested we turn some of my writing into podcasts. I loved the idea. Following Grandma intergenerational podcasts. I would record and he would produce. You are listening to the first Following Grandma podcast. There are more to come, and the length will be about 15 minutes. Sometimes I'll ask friends and neighbours to join me and tell their own stories. Expect to find words of experience and even wisdom, from committed enthusiasts who've spent their lives restoring Scottish castles, to farmers like Michael who retired, became a woodcarver at 80, and sold his beautiful hand-turned Burr elm bowls to a London design shop. Or the memories of a friend who as a child lived on a Scottish island with no electricity or running water. If you enjoy nature, there's an early spring snowdrop walk in Fife, and the anticipation of the ospreys returning to nest high on their tree on a wee loch near Forfar. Last year I celebrated my birthday with a trip to the Isle of May for the annual arrival of the puffins. It was so special, and I intend to record a special puffin podcast this year. Arbroath's lifeboat and the amazing volunteers are high on my list of podcasts, along with many other untold stories. From time to time I'll disclose hidden angers, based on some surprising local discoveries. For example, 2 Peter Bruegel paintings are hanging publicly less than a mile from my cottage. They're worth millions. When I first spotted them, they didn't even have a security camera on them. And then there'll be more about the mysterious labyrinth near the coastal path. It never fails to slow me down, and always reminds me to express gratitude for being invited to come and live here in Arbroath. And that's another podcast teaser, because I always say the cottage invited me to come and live here. It involves Hogmanay, storms, a trip to India, a long-distance phone call, and a question about money laundering. It's certainly a podcast worth listening to. So if you enjoy intrigue, history, fun, music, and the unexpected, tune in and discover more by following Grandma. Maybe with a wee dram of whiskey in your hand?